A while ago, I planned to go on a domestic travel. However, I realized once again that over-tourism has become an unavoidable issue in Japan recently. In this video, I will introduce essential travel tips you should know before traveling to over-tourism Japan. One thing I really want you to know before you travel to Japan, and I always check it first, is the Japanese calendar. But this is actually not what I said on the thumbnail of the video, but even for those who have already decided on their travel dates to Japan, knowing the Japanese calendar is still very important. To be careful, especially when the national holiday is on Sunday. Well, in Japan, this means that the following Monday becomes a substitute holiday, resulting in a 3-day weekend from Saturday to Monday. So what happened? Well, many Japanese people use these 3-day weekends for domestic travel. So if there are any 3-day weekends during your stay in Japan, you need to plan wisely to avoid extra crowds. Well, it's not hard to imagine that knowing Japanese calendar can help you avoid crowded times, but there is actually an even bigger benefit, which is related to the next point I will introduce. This might be a small trick to know, and I sometimes use it. One way to avoid the tourists is to visit the places a little after the famous festival or event. So, for example, Aomori prefecture is famous for the Nebuta festival in summer. Well, it is obviously super fun to see the festival, but you can't avoid the congested vibe with packed accommodation at a higher rate. But to avoid that situation, all you need to do is visit Aomori at the end of August or September when the festival is ended. Obviously, things are back to normal. I visited there before the festival, and of course it's still so good. You won't get to see the festival vibe, but you can enjoy real life in Aomori. One thing to consider is that some shops or restaurants might take some days off just after major event. So please be careful. And do you remember? So it means we can say the same thing for days shortly after the Japanese long holiday week. Well, I mean 3-day weekends. So by visiting places after big events like festival and national holidays, you can avoid crowded tourists. But at least you can find less Japanese after holidays. But I know some of you still want to visit popular tourist spots even though they are very crowded. I believe Sensoji in Asakusa is a good example. If you want to enjoy this kind of temple, the true vibe of temples and shrines, getting up early and visiting as early as possible before the crowds gather is really a good idea. So for example, like during peak hours, wandering in the neighborhood of Sensoji in Asakusa can be, to be honest, really hectic. But as there are too many people stopping here and there. But if you visit early in the morning, you'll be amazed by the quietness and its real serenity. But some stores even open from 8 AM in the morning, so please adjust your schedule and avoid peak hours. I know some of you wonder when the peak hours are in each tourist, which leads to the next point I will introduce, so don't worry about that. But to fight over-tourism, some organizations are creating websites or applications for your phone to monitor the business of each spot. For example, Kyoto has a website that shows the estimated number of tourists. So from this website, we can see that the Sagano Arashiyama area in Kyoto requires caution during the daytime on weekends in October this year 2024. However, in November, we can see that even weekdays are crowded during the day. So please search for this kind of service before you go to avoid crowds. If you really wish to avoid crowds as much as possible during your Japan trip, research some activities that either require paid ticket or limited seats. For example, in Tokyo, Team Labo is a very popular place to visit. They introduced a ticket entry system, so as long as you buy a ticket beforehand, you can secure your time there and enjoy it. But in the countryside, participating in cultural workshops would be a great way to enjoy the activity without, bumping into each other or like many photographers, which we often find at famous tourist spots. In addition to this, I especially recommend deciding on and making like reservations for restaurants and hotels at least. Well, recently when I have been traveling in Japan, I've always found and booked restaurant for dinner and hotels ahead of time. You can search for the restaurant using the English version of Tableau, which I always introduce. Well, listen, you basically eat something, mostly in the restaurant in Japan, right? So you will in the end need to search and find restaurant. So why don't you do that earlier to have a better experience? Well, when you buy a thing in Japan, one thing I want you to know is that there are higher prices or special rates set for foreigners compared to Japanese people for the same product or same services. But from a Japanese perspective, like these prices can sometimes be like so high, to be honest. But so first, it's important to be aware of this fact. But however, for those of you who don't usually live in Japan, it might be a little bit difficult to judge whether these prices are high or low. Well, one approach is to look for restaurants and shops slightly away from tourist areas, but also using whether Japanese people are making purchases as a criterion, but might be effective in like judge prices, I guess. Well, there's no need to be like, overly suspicious that everything is like too expensive, but it's worth keeping in mind that there is an increasing number of products set at higher prices in Japan nowadays. Well, I imagine you want to visit Tokyo and Kyoto at least, but please don't limit your visit to Tokyo and Kyoto and maybe Osaka from the beginning. But of course there are great spots to visit, but Japan has much more to offer. And those big cities are always crowded, even with or without tourists. It's highly recommended by the Japanese government to visit other parts of Japan. Not only will you avoid the crowd, but there is a lot to explore in terms of like culture experience and local food and drinks. Well, I don't know like what exactly life in Japan is. It could be life in Tokyo, but it could be different. But I personally feel you can feel more about life in Japan in the countryside. Like a Tohoku region, like Kyushu region, and Shikoku region are all relatively countryside regions, but there are many things to be discovered by you. It might be a good idea to visit these places precisely because of the time over-tourism situation in Japan. If you want to avoid crowded places, which is all we want, but still wish to visit Tokyo, I know you, I do recommend thoroughly researching hidden spots in the area. But most of the tourists are gathering at the very famous spot that we see on like guidebooks and social media. As a result, most people go to places like Shibuya, Shinjuku, and Asakusa in Tokyo. But if you go to like places like, let's say, Kagurazaka, which is like still in Shinjuku district, there are not many tourists compared to the Shinjuku station area. There isn't such a popular and iconic spot to visit, but the place, street, and atmosphere itself are really amazing. So finding and visiting this kind of spot is also fun, especially when over-tourism getting serious. So as I told you at the beginning, I planned to go on the domestic travel, which was actually in Kyoto. But I didn't go because I was afraid of too many people there and couldn't enjoy myself. So I went to another place called Onomichi in Hiroshima. Well, this is a slightly tricky method, but there are places in Japan called Little Kyoto that once said to have old townscapes and atmospheres similar to Kyoto. But Onomichi is called the Little Kyoto of the Seto Island Sea. It's a place that once flourished as a port town, and many historic buildings still remain today. That's why I went there instead of visiting Kyoto. Of course, you might not see temples and shrines as grand as those in Kyoto, to be honest, but you can enjoy sightseeing in a more relaxed atmosphere while experiencing the local lifestyle. While visiting such a spot that served as an alternative to famous tourist destination is very important when traveling in Japan during times of over-tourism. Please enjoy a wonderful trip to Japan, and thanks so much for watching. See you soon. Bye.